I did a prior video saying that Mystery Babylon is a lot of times represented with architecture, and gave the example of the Tower of Babel, which was built as an act of defiance and housed idols of false worship, often incorporating false pagan gods or fallen angels, or their offspring, architecture does. And there are so many examples, but here's one. The Art Museum in Philadelphia, which I've been to before. See how it's laid out? And here is part of the building. Well, you can see it. That's this part over here. And it's Greek deities and mythological creatures. You got your half snake man over here. Nephilim. The building is also adorned with griffin dragons. And they're the symbol of that museum, the griffin dragons. And the best example is this statue of Diana, the goddess Diana, which is front and center right when you walk in to that museum, like a temple or a shrine or something. And she's highlighted big time between two pillars. So that had struck me when I was there, and I was thinking I needed to look into it. So I finally did. And this statue, it was originally in New York in Madison Square Gardens as a weather vane, and then it eventually moved to this museum in Philadelphia, and they covered it with gold, gilt, or whatever they call that. The sculpture was the Augustus St. Gaudens, but the interesting or disgusting part is who commissioned it or paid for it, who paid the sculpture to make it, and it was this guy, Stanford White. And this guy, Stanford White, of the American Renaissance era, was a wealthy guy. And I'm just going to read about him right off this Wikipedia page. He was a collector of rare and costly artwork and antiques. He maintained an apartment with a rear entrance in Manhattan. He had a room painted green and outfitted with red velvet swing, which hung from the ceiling suspended by ivy-twined ropes. And he used playing with the elaborate swing as a means to groom underage girls for a sexual relationship, including Evelyn Nesbit, which began when she was 16 years old or maybe younger. And that Evelyn Nesbit eventually became a fashion model and a chorus dancer. And eventually her future husband, a fellow named Thaw, was put on trial because he eventually shot and killed the guy, this white guy, who had groomed her. And after White was killed, the newspapers began to investigate his life, continuing through the trial, and investigated his sexual relations with numerous underage girls. And there was a historian who wrote, the process of seduction was a major feature of Stanford's obsession with sex, an inexorable kind of seduction which moved into the lives of very young women, sometimes barely pubescent girls, in fragile social and financial situations. He belonged to an underground sex circle made up of members of the Union Club, which was a men's club, who had frequent orgies in locations scattered around New York, with some other members of that. What Mark Twain said about him, because he was acquainted with him, is that he eagerly and diligently and ravenously and remorselessly hunted young girls to their destruction. These facts have been well known in New York for many years, but they've never been openly proclaimed until now. That was during the trial. So apparently this white guy instructed the sculptor, that Gaudens guy, to make this Diana statue more pubescent. And then that sculptor complied because White was paying him. So here you have the statue of the goddess Diana in front and center of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and it was commissioned by a well-known pedophile who also did instruct the sculptor to make it more pervy. And so people, including me when I walked in there, you walk in and you're just in awe of it, you know, it's all gold and everything. This is the world we live in. And I thought this was a perfect example of false god idol worship in architecture in Mystery Babylon, along with all the countless others. And regarding museums, the Met in New York City, where the Met Gala is held, and the Smithsonian Museum, whose funder was James Smithson, who was also a fellow of the Royal Society. And so there's no need to wonder why they only display what they want us to see. Thank you for listening.